Alrighty, welcome back, boys and girls. It's your main math man, Mr. Shank, coming to you live from Walker Grant Middle School.
Woo! Yeah!
What's up, Mr.
Thanks! Oh, yeah.
All we're going to be talking about today is some slope and y-intercepts. So, on your paper it has this. It says, for us, meaning this entire year, and in Algebra 1, and in Algebra 2. Equations of functions will always be in slope-intercept form. And the reason why I underline those two words is because maybe sometimes you forget what that word means, and so you need to recap. So your slope is just going to be the steepness of a function, meaning the incline or decline. Again, you can think of when you're hitting the slopes and the alpines, going up or going down, hopefully going down, but at some point you have to go up as well.
Period. What the frick?
Shut up!
In the intercept, that means to hit. So it's going to hit a certain point. And so if you ever need to go back and see this video at any point in time, make sure you pause. That way you can get this written down. Moving on.
And make sure you
It says this equation would look like this. Again, it's going to be in the form of y equals and then mx plus b. And so make sure you're seeing it. As always, I try to make sure I have my variables and everything color-coded. Again, our outputs, our range, our y values are going to be in red. I'm going to make sure every variable is color-coded, so y is going to be our output values, and then it has equals mx plus b. And so since our m is our coefficient, we're going to have that stand for our slope. And then the variable b is going to stand for your y-intercept. And so I'm going to be able to define what those actually mean very shortly. But just make sure that you're at least seeing those differences. So again, our variable m stands for slope, and the variable b stands for y-intercept. So then slope refers to the steepness of a function. And it's talking about how either hard it is to go up, or how difficult it is to go down, or maybe anything in between. It is the coefficient of our slope-intercept form. And so there are going to be three types of the slopes that you will need to be able to identify. And the three different graphs that you have are right here. So already drawn for you, you can see a positive slope. Notice how as you're going from left to right, you're going up the hill. The opposite of that would be a negative slope. As you're going from left to right, you're now going down the hill. And then lastly, if you're in the desert or anything like that, you can have a zero slope. And so it's going to be like this. It's going to be m is positive, m is going to be negative, or m is going to be equal to 0. And the main key part for this, though, please make sure you write down and see. Our slope is defined as the change in y divided by the change in x. You can also call it the rise over the run. You can call it the rise over the run. And notice again how I have my values labeled as in red or in blue. If you need to pause to write anything down, please make sure you do. Again, you can always replay, fast forward,
Or rewind.
and recatch yourself. Moving on. So on the back, it has the y-intercept is the point where the line of our function hits our y-axis. And so when you're looking for that when you're looking for that point, again, it's just going to be your point where it hits the y-axis. So you're going to have to look going up and down. The ordered pair that is formed will always be 0 for your x value and the value b. Again, it's going to be on that point on the y-axis. So since it must be x equals to 0, and again, where the line hits is labeled as b. So when you're looking at a graph, always be able to look at the y-axis, which is your vertical axis, and be able to find and decide what that point is. Moving on. An example would be this. If you have your graph, so let's say if you're starting with the graph that is on your paper, again, you have these points plotted, and so you can see the staircase, again, is going to look like this. Notice how I rise 2 and I run 1. So I have plus 2 in the y direction, and then I have plus 1 in the x. This is how you find each point as a solution. So each time you're making a staircase, each time you're taking 2 steps in the y direction and 1 step in the x direction. If you can go up the staircase, you can also go down the staircase. So if I went 2 down and 1 to the left, it would still give me a point on that line. Again, this is going to be one of the representations that you'll be given, and you will have to come up with the others. So another example would look like this. This is the same function. This is the same function, but now it gives you the values. So the table is what I like to call the ladder, and so what it looks like for you is it will give you a set of values. So in that warm-up, it also gave you a set of values. They were in order, and all you had to do is see, hey, what is that pattern that it's making? So for our x values, it's increasing by 1, and then since those are in order, and there's no skipping steps, because if you skip any steps, you're going to fall down that staircase. Since you're not skipping any steps, you can see, hey, in the y value, you're increasing by 2 each time. And so you're able to come up with your rise over your run, or your change in y, which is 2, over your change in x, which is 1. Again, you can also anticipate what the next values would be. So for example, if we would predict, we could say plus 1 would be 5 for the x value, and then plus 2 would be 11 for the y value. If you can go down the ladder, you can go up the ladder, and so if we went up the ladder, we're now going -2 in the x, and it would be -3 in the y. And so lastly, but never leastly, the equation of the function, I personally think is the easiest one. Again, it's going to be in the form, our slope-intercept form. And so you have to be able to identify what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. Again, I'm going to try to get us to box in the slope, and so always that coefficient of x. And so for this one, our slope is 2. And then it is the entire term after that first one. So it's going to be 2x plus 1. And so our slope is 2, and then our y-intercept, labeled as b, is going to be a positive 1. So that means that our line hits the point 0, 1, which you are able to see in that graph from that original function. It hits that point 0, 1, which is right here. Again, make sure you have those different points on there. As always, make sure you're asking questions. Make sure that you are going back and filling anything out. Gather yourself. Make a positive change for yourself and others. And as always, thank you, boys and girls. don't forget to slam that subscribe button.